Hi, it's me, Creaky.
I discussed the potential of holographic technology. That is supposedly the ISS, but we know better.
Now I know this whole video may seem like a joke, but it isn't. He actually thinks the ISS is a hologram.
As I've showed in the past, the space shuttle footage we've all seen actually comes from the U-2 spy plane.
Really? Well, how fascinating. And I can't speak for everyone watching this, but I know I'm excited to see your proof.
We're going to dig a little bit deeper here today regarding the U-2 plane and its connection with space. Just have a quick look at here, Wiki Space Shuttle, just to show you some timelines. The first ever space shuttle launch was in 1981, okay? First flight, 1981, okay? Bear with me. We come here, NASA and their U-2 spy planes. They first acquired them in 71 and then updated them in guess what year? You got it. NASA acquired its first ER-2 aircraft in 81.
What? Two things happened at the same time? You have got to be joking. How can anyone even consider the possibility of two things happening at once?
So the same year that NASA had their first launch with the space shuttle was the year they got the upgraded, newer U-2 spy plane in the form of the ER-2. Newer airframe, bigger wings to go a bit higher, perfect for getting that nice bit of supposed space footage through a curved lens at high altitude. And as I've previously shown, that's exactly what they've done.
Right, hang on a second. Let me make sure I understand this. You were saying that all the footage we see from the shuttle, clearly showing the curvature of the Earth, is actually from NASA spy planes and not from the many space shuttle missions that have happened. And as far as you previously showing that all the footage we have of Earth was taken by NASA spy planes and not by the space shuttle missions, can I ask where? Was it at the pub, at a family barbecue, or through the window of your crane? Because I watch a lot of your videos, Leo, all in the name of research, obviously, and I have not once seen you come close to proving anything, apart from the fact that you're an idiot.
As I compared space shuttle imagery with James May in the U-2 spy plane. And of course the timelines again give this away. Bear with me. Here's one of NASA's ER-2s or U-2 spy planes showing the options available, the modular payloads. And of course we know is provided footage the same that is sighted supposedly from space. And let's just refresh our memories of what that is. Here we're going to flip to a footage, an image I blended from James May in the spy plane, sighted as curvature, and an image sighted from the space shuttle, again sighted as curvature.
Right, before we do any of that, let's think about it this way. Apart from the obvious, which would be that James May is also an idiot, and I'm fairly certain that's not the case, what possible benefit would there be to somebody like Mr. May in helping out those evil people over at NASA cover up the true shape of the Earth? Can you answer that? Without your answer sounding like something you'd hear if you were stood outside the door of an insane asylum, I mean.
And here they are, U-2 James May, spy plane, on the space shuttle. 170 to 80,000, well, 170,000 feet up. The other one's 190 miles up, supposedly.
And they both show that Earth is clearly a sphere. What's your point and when are you going to make it? Because so far, all you've done is two things, neither of which have surprised me. Number one, you've demonstrated yet again that you're a complete moron. And number two, you've demonstrated that you've always been a complete moron. Because like all your other ridiculous little videos, you have nothing but a series of statements about it being fake or wrong, but zero evidence to back any of it up.
It's exactly the same amount of supposed curvature. So it's optical and not physical.
What the hell does that even mean? It makes no sense. Physical is relating to things perceived through the senses, as opposed to the mind, tangible or concrete. You know, the physical world. And optical relates to sight, which oddly enough is one of those senses. So would you mind explaining how exactly someone can see something if it isn't actually there? And I know you're using these two terms incorrectly to try and imply that we see curve that isn't actually there, but sadly for you and all the other flat earth idiots, That's just not how sight works. You can't see what isn't there. And for something to be there, it has to be a physical thing. If we want to be able to see it, that is.
So if that wasn't bad enough, the U-2 spy plane exposing itself and NASA, courtesy of James May and his supposed curvature observation at 70,000 feet, which turns out to be exactly the same amount of curve the space shuttle sees, views.
How exactly are you qualifying that? By blending two photos together? You do realise that CG. Not really sure why that shocks me. You Muppets think all pictures of the globe are CG. So why not use CGI to try and prove it's not? Or it is? I'm confused. I think I can smell burnt toast.
And as we're about to see here, is exactly the same amount of curvature that is sighted from the International Space Station. Again, we'll do another comparison here, starting with James May's U2, then blended with footage from the International Space Station. And surprise, surprise, here's the U2, and here comes the ISS. It's exactly the same amount of curvature.
I know! You'd think it was two pictures of the same spherical planet, wouldn't you? And I have to ask you, Leo, did you do the maths yourself? Because you can't just claim that two things look the same and then not offer an explanation as to how you arrived at that conclusion. That would just be silly. And if by some miracle you have done the maths and found that the rate of curvature is the same, that's what you'd expect. Because the rate of curvature is pretty much constant across the globe. So it doesn't help your argument anyway.
Again, proving any curve is optical and not physical, and that all this footage is originated from NASA's high altitude spy planes.
I've just realised something, and I can't believe this didn't come to me sooner. So are we saying there is curve, but it was captured by NASA's high altitude spy plane? Or are we saying there's no curve, and that NASA have gone to the trouble of sending up high altitude spy planes to take pictures of the flat Earth, bring them back to Earth for the CGI experts at NASA to then manipulate the images to show the optical, not physical curve of the Earth that isn't actually there in the first place?
So now we've established most of the space footage we see has come from high altitude planes, most likely the U-2 spy plane here.
Damn, sorry, I must have nodded off. When did we establish that? All you've done is say it, and there's a little more to establishing something than just saying it. Right, I've got £33 million in my bank account. Right, we've established that. I'm now very rich. Let's see what else this dildo has to say.
We've shown that several instances. U2 compared to the space shuttle, U2 compared to the ISS. Kind of gives the game away, the results of those blending processes there, guys.
Oh, does it now? What are the results? You didn't show any. The only thing I think it gives away is that you've learned to use the blending tool on your photo editing app. But at least we've established that you're an idiot.
So what are we actually seeing then when we look up at the sky? We know the footage comes from high altitude planes.
No.
What are we actually seeing? I've done a video that I touched on potentially early tests with the SR-71, and I discussed the potential of holographic technology. I mean, could the U-2 be responsible for what we see in the sky? What I've seen myself certainly doesn't look like it's travelling at 17,500 miles an hour.
But it does look like a hologram projected from a high altitude spy plane. Is that what you're saying? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what it sounds like. That you think the ISS is a hologram being projected from a fast-moving plane, and no one that has ever observed the ISS from Earth, because that's very easy to do, has ever caught a glimpse of the spy plane projecting it onto the night sky. What an amazing piece of technology that plane must be. It can project an ultra-realistic hologram, stay out of sight. Wait a minute, that's two things at once again. We all know that can't happen. And I can still smell burnt toast. Should I be worried?
But could the U-2 plane be partly responsible for what we see in the sky? Again, using holographic technology. I mean, if I blend the shape of the International Space Station and do an overlay with the shape of the U-2 spy plane, as I'm about to show you, there is a fit there. And of course, if you've got the technology to project here, then that could well be what we're seeing in the sky. Let's have a quick look. The ISS, and we're blending it into the U2.
Oh dear, oh dear. Did I say that right, Leo? Now, we all know that flat earthers really have to stretch the limits of even their imagination pretty much all the time. But this, well, this is a stretch even for a flat earther. Are you completely insane? No, don't answer that. The bodies don't line up, and neither do the wings. And if you were to rotate the image of the plane to line up the body with the body of the ISS, then the wings would be even further off, and vice versa. They're a similar shape, but that's it. Similar, not the same. This is nothing more than seeing what you want to see. Optically, of course.
Coming back to the ISS. And then blending to the U2. The main body shape is obviously very similar. And then potentially you could project the rest of the International Space Station from the body, the wings of the U2. Interesting.
Very. Something that's completely wrong can be interesting.
Now we're going to look at a couple of examples of holographic technology. First one. Pretty impressive, to say the least.
No, that was very cool. I love whales. Not sure why, I just do.
Holograms you can hold.
So there's technology there to project and potentially do this job of a high altitude plane, using this kind of technology to potentially project itself and give the appearance of what we know as the ISS. And we've all seen imagery like this, stuff of the ISS that almost does look holographic.
Why? Because of the colours you can see? Wrong again. Most pictures of the International Space Station don't show much colour, with the naked eye or through a zoom lens or even a telescope. We sometimes see a yellowish red tint that can be caused by different factors, when the air is reasonably humid or when it contains a high concentration of dust. The colour can turn yellow, but it can also have a warmer than usual colour when we see the solar panels from a certain angle and the golden colour of the panels predominates. And when the ISS is eclipsed by the Earth, the moment of reaching shade can cause a dark red colour which is best observable through binoculars. This is the last sunlight reaching the station before the sun sets. It's actually the light of an orbital sunset reflecting on the ISS, not a hologram.
So, could the U2 be responsible for what we see in the sky and know as the ISS when we see things fly over by? Potentially, maybe there's a couple of different planes, faster ones. I reckon the SR-71 that NASA used in the late 90s was test runs for what we actually now see in the sky. That is supposedly the ISS, but we know better, because otherwise we wouldn't have to see the space pantomime, harness failures, hairspray fetishes, and all that stuff. We would never have to deal with that.
But we have to deal with people like you that are completely mind-numbingly stupid, so why should you Muppets not have to deal with a few photos that you just don't understand?
But with the holographic technology around now, and no doubt has been around for quite some time, that could quite possibly be what's going on up in the sky.
Or it could quite possibly be a load of old bollocks. You didn't read anything about how holograms work, did you, Leo? Real holograms all require a surface in front or behind the perceived image. So how exactly are NASA pulling off that stunt? Is there yet another high-altitude spy plane carrying a big board so that the other high-altitude spy plane that's allegedly projecting the hologram has something close by to allow the hologram to be seen? Holography also requires a working surface that can keep the equipment completely still, so not hurtling through space at 17,000 miles an hour then. Damn, back to the drawing board, eh?
We know the holographic technology's there, we've seen it. And we know the military are way ahead of the mainstream as far as tech is concerned. So I think it's more than likely what we see up in the sky is a high altitude plane, more than likely with some kind of projection tech to fool the masses into thinking there's some tin can hurtling around a ball.
Why though?
Alright, watch this next. But before you do, make sure you subscribe by order of the Creaky Blinder.